From Work to Text by Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes, a French literary critic, is known for his serious contribution in the area of semiotics, study of signs and symbols. His writings defy strict classification, as many of his writings challenge the boundaries of structuralism and quietly slip in the direction of post-structuralism. And this particular essay has all the overtones of post-structuralism. This essay is one of the most anthologized essays in the studies of literary theory. Barthes begins the essay with the argument that the literary text is intertextual in nature. It is constituted by ideas that have their source in other domains of knowledge or other text. A reader can appreciate a text more comprehensively if he is aware of the intertextuality and the interdisciplinarity of the literary text. His argument is that literature can no more be studied as a work, it is a text. He differentiates between the work and the text on 7 counts, namely method, genre, the sign, the plurality, filiation, reading, and pleasure. The first proposition is method. In method, he differentiates the work is concrete. The text, on the other hand, is the methodological field. This opposition recalls the distinction proposed by Lacan between reality and the real. The one is displaced and the other is demonstrated. While the work is held in the hand, the text is held in language. It exists only as discourse. The text is not the decomposition of the work, rather it is the work that it is the text imaginary tale.
Barthes next discusses about text under genres. According to him, the text doesn't come to a stop with literature. It cannot be apprehended as part of a hierarchy or even a simple division of genres. But what constitutes the text is its subversive force with regard to old classifications. Barthes states that text goes to limit of enunciation, that is rationality, readability, and so on, and text is always paradoxical. And then under sign, text is approached and experienced in relation to the sign, that is signifier and signified. Whereas work loses itself on the signified. There are 2 modes of signification that are attributed to this signified. One is work becomes the object of science of letter, and work depends upon a hermeneutic, that is theory of interpretation. Text practices infinite deferral of the signified. On the other hand, work functions as a general sign. Text is dilatory, which is slow to act. The signifier must not be conceived as the first stage of meaning. Work is moderately symbolic and text is fundamentally symbolic. When you take a signifier, the field of text, it should not be identified with an organic process of maturation or a hermeneutic process of depending, but it is only the series of overlappings and variations. Logic that governs the text is not comprehensive, but it is metonymic, which is closely connected to a concept. Text is restored to language. Like language, it is structured but decentered. Next, Barthes classifies text under the heading plural. Text doesn't mean that it has several meanings, but it achieves plurality of meaning. Text is not coexistence of meanings, but passage or traversal. Thus, it answers not to interpretation, but to explosion. Text plurality depends on the stereographical plurality that relating to some solid form of the signifiers that we with.
Fifth preposition is filiation. Filiation is a relation of one theme to another. It is derived from some aspect. Work. The work is caught up in a process of filiation. Three things are postulated here: a determination of the work by the outside world, a consecution of works among themselves, an allocation of the work to its author, literary research. Therefore, lands to respect the manuscript and the author's declared intentions. The text, on the other hand, the text is read without the author's signature. The metaphor that describes the text is different from the metaphor of the work. The work refers to the image of an organism. The metaphor of the text is the network. If the text expands, it is under the effect of a combinatorial, a systematics, an image which comes close to modern biology's views on the living being. The text can be read without its father's guarantee. It is that the author cannot come back into the text, into his text. However, he can only do so as a guest, so to speak. If the author is a novelist, he inscribes himself in his text as one of his characters, as another figure sewn into the rug. His signature is no longer privileged and paternal, the locus of genuine truth, but rather ludic. He becomes a paper author. His life is no longer the origin of his fables, but a fable that runs concurrently with his work. Sixth preposition is reading. The work is an object of conception. The work's quality and not the actual process of reading that can establish differences between books. There is no structural differences between cultured reading and casual subway reading. Cultured reading, which means formal reading, and casual subway reading, which means informal reading. The text transfers the work from its conception and gathers it up as play, task, production, and activity. Text records an attempt to abolish the distance between writing and reading, not by intensifying the reader's projection into the work, but by linking the two together in a single signifying process. The distance separating writing from reading is historical during the era of greater social division. Rhetoric, the great literary codes of those times, taught writing. School now prides itself on teaching how to read and not how to write. In fact, reading in the sense of observing is not playing with the text. Readers plays two roles. First as an interpreter, second as a music lover who listens to music without knowing how to play it. Reads only for pleasure. The reduction of reading to consumption is obviously responsible for the boredom that many people feel when confronting the modern. Seventh preposition is pleasure. Final approach to the text is pleasure. The author reads the work of Proust, Flaubert, Barthes. He can read those authors, but he cannot rewrite them. One cannot begin to write the same works again. The text, on the other hand, is linked to enjoyment, to pleasure without separation. These few prepositions inevitably do not constitute the articulation of a theory of the text. The theory of the text can coincide only with the activity of